guys, my name is Sarah.
And I'm Kian with Conservation Nebraska. Welcome to our new Upcycling Series,
Rehash Your Trash! Before we really get started, just a brief introduction to who we are and what we do. Conservation Nebraska protects our state's natural legacy by educating the public, supporting communities, and increasing civic engagement. We support this mission as members of Americorps, a federal agency for volunteering, service, and civic engagement. Americorps specifically engages millions of Americans in citizen service through its programs and leads the nation's volunteer and service efforts.
We decided to create this series to inspire people with creative methods of waste divergence. The more we're able to reuse, the less that goes to recycling centers, consuming energy to be converted into new products, and the less that goes into our landfills, consuming space and contaminating natural environments.
Now let's upcycle! What exactly is upcycling? The term itself might be new to the spotlight, but the practice is as old as time. Taking something, whether it be old furniture, plastic containers, fabric scraps, etc., and turning it into something new. Sometimes put alongside reuse, upcycling is a wonderful and convenient method of waste divergence. Oftentimes, people will use the terms upcycling and recycling interchangeably. While they both aim to divert waste from landfills, there are some key differences between the two in terms of process and scale. Recycling involves a large-scale operation. People turn in their recyclables to a facility, which then breaks the recyclables down into raw components that are then used to remanufacture new products. Upcycling, however, is usually done on a smaller scale and involves retaining the properties of the original object and use of other creative methods to either improve or emphasize a use the object originally didn't have. In other words, upcycling is taking something old and adding new value to it. While discussing waste management, keep in mind the 5 R's of waste management: refuse, reduce, reuse, repurpose, and recycle. The order of these is meant to indicate their priority. While recycling does have its benefits, it is still a process which requires the use of energy, resources, and time. Upcycling and repurposing what would otherwise be processed helps increase the lifetime of materials like plastic while also saving energy and, in some cases, your money. While Nebraska isn't the worst state in terms of waste management, we certainly have some work to do. A 2021 study between Eunomia Research and Ball, the company that makes mason jars, of the recycling rate of each state ranked Nebraska at number 40 in terms of the amount of our waste that is recycled. According to the 2015 Nebraska Recycling Study from the University of Nebraska, Nebraskans spend around an estimated $33.5 million annually disposing of materials that could be recycled, based off of a 2013 baseline. That is $33.5 million just to pay to bury the materials in the landfill. The estimated price put on these recyclable materials amounted to $86.5 million worth of recyclable materials that were put into landfills. The entire point of upcycling is waste divergence, but how do we properly work with materials to make our projects last? In this section, we're going to go through some of the most commonly recyclable materials that you can upcycle and what specific materials are best to use in upcycled projects. Paper is a useful material because of its flexibility, and because of its surface area, it can also be strong if used correctly. 3 common methods of working with paper include folding, rolling, and mache. You'll hear me mention this quite a bit throughout the video, but one of the most important parts of making any object, no matter how small, is structural integrity and durability. Folding paper, for example, is one great way to make a project stronger. Use shapes to create supports, such as cylinders, cubes, triangles, or even accordion-style folds. Flanges, or the little tabs on each of the bottom of these shapes, allow for the support to attach more easily and in more areas to the base of the project. The point of using these shapes is to distribute weight in a way that doesn't overwhelm any one part of the project or structure. For example, structural engineers know that when building a house, the roof's weight will be distributed through each of the walls of the house. The strength of paper also changes the more tightly you roll it. One large paper support might crumple if it's only rolled once, but if you roll it tightly and add multiple small supports, there will be less risk of your project collapsing. So if you're making something somewhat heavy, make sure to keep in mind the thickness of paper, as well as the shapes your paper creation makes to allow for a more stable distribution of both weight and force. Similar to folding, one of the strongest methods for building is rolling. Rolling is good to use both to wrap things externally for decoration or to keep them together, and also to add extra support and thickness to materials. One method of paper rolling is quilling. This technique involves using tight rolls and sometimes folds of paper as parts of a larger mosaic-like piece and are a great way to create beautiful projects using extra scrap paper. Mache is also a wonderful tool to strengthen your paper projects. It requires only plaster, which can be made easily at home, paper, and something to mold it over like a ball or balloon. Use this method to make other structures stronger. You can even make your own structure out of paper mache, though keep in mind you have to fully let it dry before removing the support and in between putting multiple layers on. Mache also becomes stronger when you tear rather than cut the paper. Keep in mind that paper is made of fibers, and these fibers can bind together more easily when you tear rather than cut them. Use this natural feature of paper to your advantage. Just like paper, much of cardboard reuse is about shape and structure. Cutting cardboard is the most common method used during upcycling. Examples include the use of slots to create braces or intersections. This reference is just one of many showing examples of different ways you can make cardboard stronger using shapes. Another thing to note is the type of cardboard. Corrugated cardboard is often used with boxes, and the backs of notebooks use a type of cardboard called bookboard, coming in various kinds of thickness. Glass and ceramics can also be used in upcycling projects. Today we will be talking about preparing glass and ceramics for painting or other decorative stuff, as well as fixing broken ceramic pieces. As a note, we won't be talking about cutting glass as that requires more experience. Anything that requires a large amount of cutting or electricity, please do your research before attempting and make sure to get proper materials and tools. When working with glass, make sure to prep your glass using a mild abrasive material, as well as removing any labels using an adhesive remover. When painting or decorating, be sure to use a glass-compatible paint. Listed on screen, we have some paints that have some glass-friendly alternatives. Also, be sure to know what the purpose of the project is before you paint and seal it. For example, never use a non-food safe sealant on something you plan to eat off of. Paper mache glue or sealant is another option for decorating glass, though it's definitely not recommended for heavy wear and tear items. Gluing pieces back together is another way to make sure you can save them from the landfill. This piece right here is a little pencil cup I got secondhand. When it shattered, I used pottery glue to glue it back together. I accidentally left it in the oven for too long, which is why it's a little burnt, but otherwise it works and completely functions as I had it before. Make sure to add pottery glue to your arsenal. Avoid gluing glass back together and make sure any materials you use are oven and dishwasher safe before you put them back together. Metal is an underrated material in household upcycling projects. Metal is great to be used either as a base, as a connector, or just for show. As we'll discuss later with hard plastic, you can use lids as bases for a project. They have quite a bit of strength because of their shape, or you can save old chains and clasps from jewelry to use in other projects. Some essential tools I like to use are wire cutters, as well as these little needle nose and flat nose pliers. Whenever you use old metal, be sure you clean it first and be wary of using really old or flaky metal, especially if you don't know exactly what's in it. Fabric is one of the most rapidly increasing forms of waste with the increasing prevalence of fast fashion. However, there are certain upcycling methods that can keep your clothing lasting longer. Darning is a method that has been used for centuries in its most basic form, though there's much more complex methods that can be used for decorative purposes. Essentially, this method requires creating a small weave in the fabric done either by hand or by machine, mimicking the weave of the existing fabric. This method can be used to repair sweaters, socks, and blankets with holes in them. This method is also easier with a darning needle, which is a larger needle that's dull on the end. Another tip using this method is to mimic the shape of the area you're repairing. So, for example, putting a small round object like a ball in the heel of a sock to mimic the shape of the heel while mending will prevent deformed repairs. Another tried and true method of upcycling fabric includes making patches. You can make a patch out of nearly any fabric, whether stiff or flimsy. Flimsy fabrics like socks can be reinforced by stitching to a larger piece of fabric that is more firm, like denim. Fabric can even be applied from the inside of garments to give the garment a distressed look with a pop of another material or color. This section will cover both hard and soft plastics. Hard plastics will include things like bottle caps and plastic takeout containers, while soft plastic will mean things like plastic bags and cling wrap. Hard plastics, much like metal, can be used as supports for projects due to their rigidity and shape. However, an underrated use is to use hard plastic bottles or containers with screw caps on them as connectors. This can be done by cutting out the top of the bottle with the screw, attaching it to whatever project or prop you want to make, and gluing the bottle cap to the other part that you want to attach. Keep in mind, this isn't necessarily the strongest method. It's best used for things made with lighter materials or that are used for decorative purposes. You can also just use hard plastic containers and compartments as storage, either redecorating them or just using them as drawer organizers as they are. Even plastic strips can be used to either separate or strengthen organizational containers. Soft plastic currently can be recycled through the Hefty Renew program. However, there always seems to be an overabundance of plastic bags in every household. While they can be reused as mini trash bags, shopping bags, and more, they have a relatively short lifespan. One common method of upcycling this soft plastic is to turn it into plarn, or plastic yarn. Tutorials will show you how to strip and cut plastic bags to be used as fiber for things like bags, rugs, and more. There are a couple things that you should keep in mind while upcycling or doing any creative project that involves multiple materials. The first tip is to know your material. So this means knowing what you can use for binding, painting, sealing, attaching things, etc., and what can't be used. So knowing things that are toxic, knowing, for example, that styrofoam will melt under spray paint, and what will ruin your project. Knowing your materials means also working in well-ventilated areas if you're doing large-scale projects and working with fume-heavy materials. You don't want to accidentally hurt yourself doing a fun upcycling project. Make sure to always wear protective gear and do your research if you're cutting into something or using high heat. Make sure that if you get second-hand materials that you're also checking what your use is going to be in relation to what is on the material already. If you don't know, don't use it for anything that will be consumed. Another tip is to separate your idea of the material in its original form from its utility. So thinking of things in terms of its qualities instead of what's marketed to you as, and any stigma behind that, will allow you to use that material more effectively and longer. This will also help you determine what to save and what to throw out. So for example, looking for useful or strong shapes that you can use in projects, seeing if something is damaged, or even just seeing if a material will connect to something else via a screw top or something similar. Upcycling efforts, no matter how small, are a fun way to increase the lifetime of the things you own while also breaking down the idea of temporary objects and materials. No matter how big or small the project is, upcycling helps us break down and save materials from the landfill. That was a long one. Thank you guys for sticking with it. We hope you tune in for the rest of this series as we work on small upcycling projects. If you have upcycling tips or questions that we didn't mention here, use the hashtag #RehashYourTrash and we will see it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Conservation Nebraska to keep up to date with other events and webinars we post, and we hope to see you in the next one. Bye!